Can we get back to the title screen? Great. Hello, I'm Tom Pender from ISC2. I oversee an area for the organization called Global Enterprise Relations, and it allows me to engage in conversations at enterprise level with a variety of different kinds of organizations about educational and professional and other developmental needs. I'm happy to be a part of things, and before I get started, I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to Val, Kalal, and Mina for the exceptional help they just gave me a few minutes ago, getting me in the saddle and actually being able to present to you. We had a technical glitch, operator error on my part, and yet they are consummate professionals and helped me/us recover quickly. So y'all, thank you very much. A few quick words about ISC2 to get started. We are the world's largest not-for-profit association of certified cybersecurity professionals. Most folks know us as the CISSP people. We are 170,000 members strong with a bead on 200,000 by the end of December. And we're in explosive growth mode with ambitious targets in the next few years, which you'll see why in just a minute. Now, our mission is to inspire a safe and secure cyber world, and we do that by working with businesses and governments to understand their security posture requirements. And then we follow that up by providing education and competency assessment for their workforce development needs. And because we realize that certifications aren't enough, we support professionals broadly with their ongoing professional development needs and any custom development needs the organization may have. And I'm always happy to explore those offline for anyone who's interested. Finally, ISC2 is a global advocate for ethical best practices and the growth of the profession. Next slide, please. There you go. Okay, today's an exciting discussion because we're talking about one of the most fundamentally overlooked aspects of cybersecurity. And that's how we're drawing people into our profession to fill the skills gap and to do so in a globally meaningful way, that is, at scale. Next slide. So, by our own research and validated by other independent bodies, I will say, here's the state of the cybersecurity workforce. In 2020, we had a workforce estimated at around 3.4 million, and we needed a total of 6.5 million, leaving a gap of over 3 million cybersecurity professionals. In 2021, the estimated workforce grew, but so did the need, leaving a gap of 2.7 million. And to close this gap, we need to increase the number of cybersecurity professionals by 65%. So the good news is year over year, we shrank the gap by 10%. Yay. But the bad news is we've still got a huge problem, and that is too little supply chasing too much demand. Next slide. In October 2021, ISC2 published our annual cybersecurity workforce study. Now, this is a staple in the industry, and once again, we had some tough news to report. 2 out of every 3 organizations we surveyed revealed a staffing shortage, and 60% of those reported an uncomfortable degree of exposure, including 15% at extreme risk. Next slide. Focusing on the people part of the people, process, technology triad, here's what we also found. Too little staff means misconfigurations, oversights, an inability to know all of the threats, let alone assess and manage them. We're rushed getting stuff out, and we're slow getting stuff patched. Cyber professionals know the impact of staffing shortages. It leaves your organizations vulnerable. In this audience, you all know that the attacks won't wait for us to staff up. Next slide. Today's session is designed to teach you more about what we at ISC2 have learned through our research and interviews with cybersecurity professionals. You'll learn how our findings can help you to build cybersecurity teams with depth and longevity. If we're to discuss how to build cybersecurity teams with depth and for the long term, we really have to understand what the initial few years of a career in the field look like. What motivates today's job seekers? And how can we supplement our existing talent pool? Next slide. Building a strong cybersecurity team is a big challenge for any organization. Talent is scarce, but many organizations continue to repeat the mistakes of focusing their time and energy on hunting down the select few cybersecurity all-stars instead of strategically developing their teams at all skill levels to create a sustainable, long-term investment in their security personnel. Like any great championship team, there are all-stars and role players, and the whole is often greater than the sum of the parts. Any one of these players could be asked to step up in a big moment with their unique contribution toward a massive goal. Next slide. So maybe it's time to take another look at hiring. First, cybersecurity is a long game, and business leaders must stop expecting their teams to do more with less. Invest in your cyber defenses as you would any critical strategic organizational need. As you know, Band-Aids won't cut it, especially with increasing global cyber threats. Second, in a technical world, the non-technical is just as important. In some cases, even more so. Cybersecurity professionals believe that hiring for strong problem-solving abilities, curiosity, and eagerness to learn, strong communication skills, and strategic thinking are equally or more important than certifications and relevant cybersecurity experience. Next, diverse teams are better at solving the dynamic problems posed on the cyber risk landscape. Recruit people from different backgrounds who are attracted to the challenges and rewards of a cybersecurity career and are willing to learn. Threat actors don't care about identity unless it's to steal yours. If they're benefiting from diverse perspectives and multiple ways of thinking to get into our systems, why would we handicap ourselves by not diversifying our own talent? And finally, organizations tend to throw money at technology, but technology is only as good as the people who use it. The proven way to build a strong security team and culture is to invest for the long term in people and their growth through professional development, on-the-job training, and mentorship. Organizations that view professional development as an investment in people rather than an operational expense can make substantial gains towards improving their security posture, cybersecurity job satisfaction, and staff retention, all of which filters down to the bottom line. Next slide. The pathways are changing. While an IT background remains the single most common route taken, it's giving way to a variety of entry points. Slightly more than half of cybersecurity professionals got their start outside of IT. And getting a start outside of IT is actually more common for younger professionals. Gen Z and millennials, under 40% started in IT compared to over 50% for Gen X and boomers. And they have higher rates of entry through education and self-learning. Coming from the accounting profession, I was surprised to discover the lack of a standard pathway in cybersecurity. Now, this strikes me as both a blessing and a curse. It means increased opportunities for entry into the profession, but there's no clear way forward if you're just getting started. So what's a profession to do? Stay tuned. And next slide. Lots of vendors are ready to sell a tool or provide a solution. And to be sure, there are good ones out there, but there are no silver bullets. We know it's the people who ultimately make the difference. A few numbers put this into focus. 42% of respondents ranked development and retention of existing staff as having the greatest impact on shrinking the workforce gap. This was followed by initiatives aimed at recruiting new staff, 31%, and encouraging the development of future staff, 23%. Interestingly, 17% cited the use of AI and machine learning automation in cybersecurity operations. This and other data signal that while important, our professionals don't view technology investments alone as an adequate proxy for more skilled professionals on the job. Next slide. So, where do organizations plan to make improvements and investments? It's no surprise to see flexible working conditions second on this list, one of the few positives from the pandemic. Half of the activities, such as technical training and certification, apply generally to all cybersecurity personnel, but the remaining half of activities directly support the expansion of cybersecurity teams. Our study also reveals that professionals expect their organizations to adopt new practices to foster alternative pathways into cyber. A quarter to a third of enterprises plan to invest in DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, encourage minorities to pursue STEM majors in college, and to establish diversity goals. I want to call out two more items on this list for additional discussion: hiring for aptitude and also mentorship. Next slide. So by now you're picking up on a theme. We need more and different kinds of folks in the profession. Not everyone can or should look like me, and thank goodness for that. Diversity is key to closing the workforce gap and reducing the frequency and magnitude of cyber attacks. To tackle this issue, we believe we must widen the gate for entry and learn to foster a culture of inclusion throughout the profession. And guess what? They're waiting and ready to go. They just need a shot, a place to get started, someone who realizes there's untapped potential in the crowd, waiting for their seat on the bench and a place in the game. Now, while some progress has been made in equality and equity for diverse individuals, companies need to act now to promote, hire, and retain people from diverse backgrounds to recognize sustainable success. Amplifying the successes of underrepresented people in cyber and fostering a culture that enables them to prosper, it goes a long way to attracting more women, people of color, veterans, and students of all disciplines. Don't underestimate your individual power to drive change in this area. You can make a difference. Next slide. So one of the questions we asked, compared to 5 years ago, is your team more or less diverse than it was? For example, in areas of increased representation across age groups, gender, race, sexual identity, disabilities, and so forth. Now, the good news is half said we're better than we were, and sadly, over a third said, when is something going to happen? Look around your next conference or local chapter meeting, and you'll see we still have work to do. Next slide. Okay, let's say you're on board with the whole DEI thing, but how? Well, here's the 6 things you can begin to impact immediately after this session is over. Establish or enhance company mentorships. Increase flexibility. Revisit your hiring practices. Close your pay and promotion gaps. And pro tip on this one, promote from within, because they already know the organization and can apply their institutional knowledge at increasing levels of responsibility. And that's a good thing. The bottom line, you'd be amazed at what a little conversation and planning can do in this area. Maybe the big scary thing is expanding the team to include folks who don't look or act like the ones who have traditionally done the work. But I ask, is that any scarier than a breach that happens while we're all seeing things on our side the same way? Next slide. So where do we go for the new talent? How about these for starters? Maybe it's educational programs like law, art, or communications. Now, some of you may have rolled your eyes at the mention of art, but remember this. We have proportionally spaced fonts on our machines because Steve Jobs hired liberal arts majors. Now, think what we can do in cyber with more and broader perspectives like that. Four-year college and university programs are great, but so are community colleges, historically Black colleges and universities, and minority-serving institutions. And veterans, what a natural fit as they transition from the nation's security to security roles in civilian life. And let's not forget their networks of spouses and family members. Next slide. So here's a slide full of stuff you already know about the most promising candidates. Puzzles. We love our Rubik's Cubes. You'll see one in my background when I come back on camera. Intellectual curiosity, the pursuit of why and how. Communication skills, to be sure. These are crucial for everyone, and we can all always get better on this one. And finally, strategic skills. That's your leadership potential. And hopefully CISSPs, wink, wink. Next slide. Okay, there's a lot of good information here, and this deck will be available with a link to our study at the end. But the bottom line on this one on VIP skills includes how someone approaches challenges, what are their work styles and attributes, and while communications may be at the bottom here and looks to be at odds with the previous slide, realize that almost all of these score a 4 or better on a 5-point scale. And the former auditor inside compels me to point out that a bit of rounding puts that last item, business acumen, into the same category. Next slide. When it comes to understanding what attracts job seekers to our profession, we can see that the opportunity for problem solving tops the list, but it's also about the industry's skills shortage. They understand there's a large gap and also low unemployment in this industry, and that career advancement opportunities exist. Now, as we've seen in past research, high salaries are not the top factor that makes people pursue a career in cybersecurity, but it doesn't hurt either. Respondents typically indicate they are more interested in the mission of protecting people and solving problems. So we are attracting a certain type of individual who may be more altruistic than average. This is a passion-driven audience, and employers benefit from that, and we'd be wise to capitalize on it. Next slide. Here's what pursuers indicated they believe are the factors that will result in them landing that first role and succeeding in it. Certifications and professional knowledge, IT experience, of course, but also networking and mentoring, meaning they're savvy enough to see the multiple paths to Mount Fuji. Next slide. Based on what we heard from both professionals and job pursuers, here are the top 10 strategies to build teams for long-term success. Calling out a few of the significant ones, let me point these out to you. Looking inward, that is mining your current talent pool. Create realistic job descriptions. We've all seen the posting for the junior SOC analyst that requires a CISSP. Is it a job description? Yes. Is it realistic? Not so much. View education as an investment rather than an expense. I can't overemphasize that one enough. And finally, realize that recognition builds confidence. I ask you to think back to your own start in this career and determine the people or remember the folks who were quick to affirm some of the good jobs that you did along the way. And remember to extend the same to the newer members of your team. Next slide. Okay, you've heard me point to aptitude at least a couple of times by now. Let's drill down on that a bit. Next slide. We believe the industry needs something new and something different. A recognized global measure for skills verification and baseline understanding of the core cybersecurity domains. Something that provides candidates with confidence and employers with a level of assurance that a candidate has the foundational knowledge, skills, and abilities needed for an entry-level or junior position. bringing students, young professionals, and career changers into cybersecurity careers at an entry level and setting them up on a pathway to success. It's essential for creating the growth we so desperately need. Next slide. And here's what ISC2 is doing about it. As of January the 1st, we launched an entry-level program that will enable candidates, including students, young professionals, and career changers, to demonstrate to employers their familiarity with the foundational concepts. The CISSP people have worked with top professionals and practitioners in the field to create an assessment that helps someone predict their future success in the cybersecurity profession. Yep, you heard that right. This certification isn't about the years of experience you've accumulated, but rather the proficiency you've demonstrated for the journey ahead. Next slide. It's designed to be a first step on the path of a career in cybersecurity. Little to no experience is required to sit for the exam. If you own a phone or have spent time around anything with a chip in it, which is everything, you're likely able to step up and sit for this exam. It's a place to get started for those who just need a shot or don't know where to begin. To be clear, this is truly entry level. Again, you don't need any prior experience to take the exam. This is the quote one to precede them all, if you will. And it's for folks interested but unsure, ones who need that shot but don't know where to start. Potential audiences include those transitioning from IT, those for whom even Security Plus may be a bit too much at first. And as mentioned, 2 and 4-year colleges, veterans, and overlooked and underserved communities. Next slide. This one is different and special. Unlike our other certifications like CISSP, this one carries, again, no experience requirement. It tests for aptitude and proficiency. The value prop to students and candidates is a quick start to letters behind their name. The value prop to hiring managers is to spot talent on the horizon before other companies' hiring managers do. Now, I mentioned that we are in pilot mode. We're running the pilot through the end of April 30. And what we're doing is accumulating a critical mass of test takers who can help us validate the results of the exam before we're in full production on July the 1st. Once our pilot period is over for the exam takers, the psychometricians will turn them loose. They will go and do their statistical validation. We will determine the questions that stick and we'll boost up in those areas. We'll throw out the stinkers, and then we'll be ready to be fully operational for the second half of the year. If you're interested in learning more about this unique program, I would also be happy to speak with you about this offline. And you'll have my contact information in the slides as well. Next slide. So transitioning back to some of the different ways employers can use to close the gap. Alternative approaches include both apprenticeships and internships. Apprenticeships give entry-level professionals the ability to try multiple functions under the cybersecurity umbrella. And while less structured than apprenticeships, paid internships provide opportunities for those with other commitments such as education, another job, or caregiving. You can see that the emphasis here is to give candidates and potential new hires hands-on application and experience in the real world. Combine that with body of knowledge from the classroom and potentially an entry-level certification like the one I just described, and you can see now how employers start to increase their odds of hiring success when looking at candidates out in the field. Next slide. Quick few words about mentorship. Mentorship is also critically important. The absence, especially of diverse role models that aspiring professionals can identify with and find inspiration from, It's a major barrier for awareness and consideration of a cybersecurity career. I encourage everyone to become a mentor when they are ready. It's an incredibly rewarding experience helping someone develop their own career. I know from my own experience how rewarding it has been when you help someone see the light bulb come on when they're trying to solve a particular problem or they're working through a challenge, and you help them get there, hopefully on their own, by asking them smart questions. That's one of the greatest things I ever got from mentors along the way, is that ability to ask smart questions. It doesn't have to be a formal program, although it certainly can be, but anything you can do to encourage someone coming up into the profession, regardless of age, regardless of background, regardless of skill sets, has the potential to pay huge benefits for you and dividends for your organization. So what are the characteristics of a good mentor? Be patient, be a good listener, be non-judgmental, and be honest. Encourage your fellow managers to take on this aspect of leadership. Mentorship isn't only an opportunity to help train new entrants to the field, but it's a chance for senior members to take on more responsibility that they otherwise might not. And you may be surprised at how mentorship can instill confidence in both the mentee and the senior team members sharing their knowledge. You may find leaders you didn't even know you had on your team. Next slide. Now, I mentioned our workforce study. You can find a link in these slides that will be made available. This report goes into far more detail than what this presentation session can accommodate. So I do encourage you to go out there and download your free copy. As I mentioned, this is an annual study we produce in the fall of each year. It is heavily relied on by many in the industry to gauge the current state of the union, so to speak. And I think you'll find lots of helpful information in there. Additionally, it can help you make the business case to your own senior management and those in hiring and budget decision positions to help make the case for expanding your team and helping you get hopefully more and better staff on your team to tackle the problems that we all know exist and are increasing. Next slide. And I believe this is going to be the last slide. So I will conclude my comments there. I understand that we are streaming this session, but I do welcome any questions after the session today. Please hit me up an email, tpender@isc2.org. I will be online for the rest of the day. You can reach out to me later this week or ping me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with members of the profession and also with aspiring members to the profession. Please let me know how I can be of help here at ISC Squared. Thanks very much. Appreciate your time. And thanks again to Val and team for your help and all the good things that you all are doing in the profession. And it's not too far of a stretch to say in the world at large today.
Excellent. Great. That was a great presentation, Tom, and I'm glad you put all the hard work into it, and we could do this together. So I think it's a load of information, analytics, and data that supports some of the decisions that we have to make, or informed decisions that we have to make in many critical areas, especially how do we navigate the cyber career workforce development together. Which areas need focus and attention. I think excellent presentation. Of course, backed by a lot of data and the hard work that the IC Square team does. Great to see come through the presentation here. Tom, as we wrap up this session, what do you think are kind of the highlights that you take in terms of actionable steps that we need to consider for a kind of a national cybersecurity strategy that this session, the Cyber Talent Week, might lead to?
A couple of things, Val, and these have really come to the forefront for me as I've spoken with CISOs and VPs of info security over the last year or so. There's a critical and really an immediate need and realization that we have to widen the gate for people coming into the profession, which means people coming into our own organizations. So I really think it's incumbent upon us in hiring positions on information security teams to work with HR to be sure that we're expanding our views and taking a look at maybe more people we would have looked at in the past. I truly believe what I shared earlier. There are a lot of folks interested in getting into this. We just need to find ways to give them a shot. And the other thing that's come up in my conversations, especially, is this notion of, okay, I want to bring talent onto my team, but it's going to take me 12 to 18 months to get them to that value balance where they're giving back to the organization what I hired them to do in the first place. Anything organizations can do, even if it's just small internships, to get people in the door and give them hands-on application and experience, it benefits the candidate, it benefits the organization. And look, even if they don't end up, if they're not a fit for your organization, they're going to go somewhere, and the profession at large is going to benefit from that. So those are the two biggest things. I would say expand the hiring view of the candidates you're looking at and consider some of those non-traditional places. One thing that I didn't mention explicitly, go into rural communities. There are a lot of folks out there with the talent, but lack the programs and the formal approach that folks in metro areas, large metro areas, just take for granted. And then I think that's probably a long-winded answer to your question, but hopefully that gives a couple of spots.
No, absolutely. I think also resonates with some of what we heard from the other sessions, like I think General Walsh spoke in the morning that, pilots typically would look from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So how can we expand the horizon that of vision? So very, very relevant. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is the new entry level criteria that our entry level talent model that you're bringing in, testing and learning for that test as well. I know you mentioned it within the presentation as well, but I want to see any specific areas that I think we can take this to a broader candidate pool, so that from that we can broaden the candidate pool of the certification candidates, right? First, you have to catch the big candidate pool, and then funnel into the certification candidates.
Yeah. So Val, you and I have had some conversations around this. We believe this is a critical area. We believe that this has a potential to help organizations make a pretty big impact in their own staffing, and then obviously maintaining their security posture. I think if you can go into the job pool and find the ones who are getting this particular program, enrolling this program, that's great. If you have employees in your existing talent pool, I mentioned this, I didn't talk about specifics, but I'll give you one example. I was in a conversation with a good friend and longtime colleague who's overseeing the cybersecurity learning and development at a large telecom firm. And he was telling me the other day that he has a ton of employees across the globe in retail locations. Well, they're not cybersecurity folks, but a bunch of them are interested in it because they've seen the headlines. They understand that there is a lucrative job for life in this area. And I think hiring managers would be wise to consider bringing on a program like this at scale inside their organizations, particularly when there's a critical mass of people already in the organization who want to migrate to cybersecurity. The other thing that's dawned on me is also, and this is up at the higher executive levels, generally speaking, leadership in the organization, why not use a program in conjunction with your security team to bring folks in the door, have them get up to speed on the security issues and help defend the organization, and then use that as a potential migration path with those business units that some of those team members really take an interest in. We realize not everybody who comes into the profession is going to stay in the profession, and that's okay. But after we've captured as many who want to come in and stay, let those folks migrate into those other business units. And ultimately, the impact is to shift security left at an enterprise level, because it becomes built into their thinking as they're working across these different business units.
No, that's very important. I think the cybersecurity profession is such wide variety of functions, and we touch probably everything within business so that we can protect and defend it. it's not necessary that you would be a cybersecurity professional. You could be in any business domain, but as long as you are informed, I think you'll make the right decisions and support this community. So that's great to hear that. Well, in the last minute we got here, Tom, I'd like to see if any final words you have for our community, and what should we look forward to. ISC2 has got a lot of great initiatives. I think one or two things that I think of the whole package that you presented today that you want us to highlight.
Let me, Val, just take a second to compliment you and the folks there at CFF. I think y'all are doing amazing work. We appreciate being a part of the conversation as you all ramp up and are also getting out there to make a positive, huge, at-scale impact. I can't overemphasize enough from my own comments how we have to do more than just put drops in the bucket. It's the drops that fill up the bucket, but the bucket continues to get larger every single day. And so to the extent that everybody can sort of pull their fair share, rise to leadership positions, and invite more folks into the profession, I think the better off we all are in terms of, we can't just move the needle. We need to rip the needle off and shove it up all the way to 11, not just a 10.
No, absolutely. This has been a fascinating conversation and a great presentation, Tom. We value your partnership and collaboration and look forward to many days more. So thank you so much, and off to the next session.
Thanks, Val.